It's Rod Suskin's World. I'm Rod Suskin and welcome to the first show of 2020. As ever, the exciting show where we have a quick overview of the year ahead, both for the country and for yourself, with a little bit extra about anything else we need to know about the world during this coming time. It's our fourth year here on Cape Town TV, and hopefully you'll be joining us the whole year, as each month we also take a much closer and more detailed look at what's happening in the country and what you can expect for yourself. But today we're going to have a look at the year. We're talking about what's going on in South Africa and the main themes and ideas you can look forward to, you can focus on during the course of this year. As I said, you'll find more details on the monthly episodes as well as on our podcast, which will appear on Cape Talks podcast website soon. Stay tuned for details on that link, and of course join the Facebook page for more information about that link, any other link, everything you need to know about the show. But first, what's going on in 2020? You know, I started the year ahead of 2019 by talking about January 2020. And in that show a year ago, I warned that in January 2020, President Donald Trump will try and start a war. There'll be massive escalation of violence and conflict, and there will be an extreme backlash of conservative and reactionary forces. And this is all because of a major important astrological cycle which plays itself out primarily over January, but on and off a little bit over the course of the rest of the year because of the principal players. Well, we've seen that that prediction pretty much came true, and when we look at where does it lead to in 2020, as we are seeing the de-escalation of tensions and the attempted de-escalation of tensions between America and Iran, we don't see the danger as quite having passed. It is good news that the peak threat of war, at least for now, has passed. But unfortunately, the main trigger is not so much international affairs as Donald Trump himself. And unfortunately, that triggering hasn't quite gone away. So the circumstances of the global cycles which brought to the brink of war in this month still perpetuate in Trump's own chart, even though the rest of the world is kind of moving on. And that's going to be dangerous. Later in this year, probably in the beginning of the second quarter of the year, or a little bit after that, maybe as late as towards August, we'll see more saber rattling from Trump as it builds up towards his general elections, which he faces in November. And in November itself, we see a lot of escalation of those things. Pretty much from August through to the end of the year, there's a lot more militant, aggressive, and reaction from Trump and his allies within his own party. That does not bode well for the conditions in America, and it still remains possible that as we get closer to the elections, President Trump is going to try and bring the country to war. There is still a crunch point for him also in February, which could very well be the impeachment, but might yet still have more to do with further aggression and, as I called it, saber rattling in the months ahead. So although main crisis has passed, it does look like Trump is not yet finished with his attempt to try and create conflict and distraction from the impeachment proceedings that go on. Will he be impeached? Probably in the way that everyone expects, yes, but not by the House, so he won't be thrown out. And will he win the elections? That's harder to tell because we don't have an opposition candidate for him yet. So we can't compare that with anything, can't compare with him with anything to see if he's going to win. It doesn't look so good in his chart, I do have to say. It looks really crunchy, but we can only see when we compare it to what are the chances of the other person winning the election. We'll know for sure. As it stands for the moment, it's very touch and go, and it's likely that the conditions which are causing difficulty for him to win the elections are the same conditions that are going to make him create the distraction of war and aggression and those kind of things, and maybe he'll win the election that way. No doubt more news about that as the year proceeds. What about here at home? Well, luckily we're not facing the same kind of threats here at home, but we do have a challenging year ahead. A lot of people have spoken about why the president is doing nothing, why the National Prosecuting Authority is doing nothing. And as we know, and as I've been saying for quite some time, they're doing much more behind the scenes in the president's very scorpionic manner than in front of the scenes. And we probably will eventually see some results from all of that in the later part of the year. People are desperate to see results in prosecutions and so on. That only looks like that's possible from about August onwards during this year. We will see some progress there, but not quite as much progress as people have been hoping for. And quite frankly, it remains a dangerous game for Cyril Ramaphosa. As we know, he is dealing with difficult forces in his own party, perhaps his own inabilities to act on many things, and his own challenges that he faces in his own leadership challenges. Maybe a great diplomat, maybe not such a great leader, because you can't really lead from behind the scenes, and he's a behind the scenes kind of a guy. And it's in the first part of this year that those behind the scenes things look a little bit more dangerous for him too. It looks like there's much more plotting and scheming and so on going on than we realize. Hopefully he realizes it. We know that he has many enemies within the party, and these first months of this year, those enemies look exceptionally dangerous. So I'd continue to warn him all the way through until April, as I've said a number of times last year, that there's too much going on for him to get any contentment about. He also faces a certain challenge of his own idealism. You know, there was a special circumstance in 1989 which helped change the future of this country. It was a mixture of idealism and reality that allowed a change to happen, that was symbolized by the great planets Saturn and Neptune together at that time, and which astrologers associate with the end of apartheid and the end of the Berlin Wall and the ensuing changes in the world. Interestingly, Cyril Ramaphosa was born at such a time when those great planets came together. So he has that kind of idealism built into him, and the challenge is how to translate that into reality. It shows that he is capable of meaningful, effective ideals and putting them into the world. The challenge is whether he's capable of the leadership and of dealing with the opposition within his own political party. That doesn't look too good. So the first part of this year is very difficult. Difficult behind the scenes, bleeding out into the little that happens in front of the scenes and the ongoing financial challenges that in the second and third quarter lead to extreme financial problems. The downgrade from Moody's, which is much expected, is certainly astrologically expected, and that looks to be happening in the second quarter, although there's also an indication in the third quarter. So it's one of those. But I would guess from this that we're looking at a financial shock in the second quarter. Since so many people are expecting a downgrade, we could always say the shock might be that they don't do it, but usually these are unpleasant shocks. Interestingly, the currency is less challenged, and the currency might still be able to remain resilient or strong or even somewhat improved despite other circumstances. As we know, our currency responds to all sorts of things and speculations and other markets and so on, and I assume that's the reason why all of that is still going on. Unfortunately, the president remains very much behind the scenes, but then in the second and third quarters he is much more visible, and that's also because he's dealing with major battles with labor and with electricity, Eskom. We know how those two things are coming together. He faces extreme resistance from unions in terms of making any changes at Eskom, and it looks like that resistance continues to block him. So although it looks like major load shedding is in the second and especially the third quarters of the year, it still looks like the government is all talk, no action, all double speak and no action, and Ramaphosa is paralyzed by his inability to deal with the larger forces of labor. A lot of this leads to major crisis for the country in the third quarter. Part of that crisis is again Eskom, apart from the load shedding, all the implications from that, and kind of as usual, the opposition fails to take advantage of any of that, except perhaps the usual chirping from the sides And it looks like the opposition also faces a crisis. Opposition is usually meant to mean the DA. Astrology traditionally deals with the official opposition, the other major party in parliament. In this country, it might talk more about opposition forces in general as well, but it does look like there's a crisis for the DA again in the third quarter, and a crisis for the country's image as a whole. We might take a little bit of a blow to our tourism industry and our image in the world, and that's why third quarter remains very possible for the downgrade, even if it doesn't happen in the first or second quarters when more people expect it to happen. Either way, it doesn't look like we're getting away with much, because the third quarter is going to catch us as well. And those financial woes continue into the last part of the year, where it looks like overspending and other problems lead to financial crisis, reversal of growth forecasts, or entering into a recession or a technical recession. But it is in August and September that we're beginning to see prosecutions and action by the NPA, and perhaps that will encourage a little bit more hope and optimism in the country and amongst the people of the country. So that's something that we can kind of look forward to in the late part of the year. It means that we've got to hang on to our hats, that we've got to try and remain strong and positive, understand that we face and we're part of a much larger crisis of our own and at a global level. Those large forces of contraction, reactionary action, conservative action affect us as much as they affect America, Britain, or anyone else. Australia. You're seeing all of that conservatism really creating a squeeze and increasing some crisis in the world. We're not immune. And the way that it's represented here is, of course, those conservative reactionary forces are the old guard in the ANC that opposes what Ramaphosa does, and the Labour forces, COSATU, etc. themselves, who also oppose everything that he does. So that remains a real and significant challenge. Ramaphosa is still going to make much less progress than he or us would like him to do, but we've all got to remember we're walking this fine tightrope, and as much as we wouldn't want the conservative forces to win anywhere else in the world and lead us to war, we wouldn't want the same here. So we need to appreciate we can't expect massive miraculous change in a climate that dominates the world at the moment, that is beginning to fade, but will only fade more so towards the end of the year 2021, picking up some of the pieces and putting things back together. So in the meanwhile, we've got to hang in there. Hopefully what our own theme for the year is going to help us hang. So stand by for your main theme and focus for the year, and then more details as the year carries on. Time to look at your theme for the year ahead. Remember, for more details about what to expect, watch the show every month, but get onto our Facebook page, Rod Suskin's World, and check out next week for the links to longer forecasts for each of the 12 signs next week. Meanwhile, Aries, your theme for the year is money. More money. Money coming in, money being collected. It's all about getting a little bit more wealthy during the course of this year. It does seem as if old debts owing to you can get paid off. It might also be necessary for you to kind of act a bit more ambitiously with greater demand and call it in. It seems as if your goals open up easily this year. You can get to the prize, and especially where the prize is about sorting out your financial life, that's what it's all about. It's coming in. Don't let the hole in your pocket make you spend on things that you don't need or unnecessary expenses of any kind. It's all about the money coming in this year, and that's what it wants to do. So for you, Aries, 2020 is the year of sorting out your financial life. Taurus, well, it does look like a good money year for you too. So you can also expect some sorting out of your financial life. But your theme for the year is all about thinking out of the box and changing how you see yourself and how others see you. Taurus, 2020 is your year to get out of the rut or the inertia or whatever stuckness you are experiencing that seems to be holding you back, because the world is ready. They are ready, but it's not going to happen on its own. You're going to have to change how other people see you, because you change how you see yourself. Do things you wouldn't usually do, think out of the box, Be willing to have people see you a little bit differently, whether it's your clothes or the things you do. Just shake it up a little bit and everything changes in response, and your path seems to open up and sort out a lot of stuff. A good sense of self is going to get to good results. That's your year 2020, Taurus. Gemini, the sign famed for being such a great thinker, problem solver, a good mind is what you've got, and that's great and gets everyone to like you, and being liked is very important to Geminis. However, Gemini, it's your think out of the box year. You also need to shake up how people see you, but more importantly, how you approach things. Typically, you're quite rational in your approach, you've got a good analytical mind, and you solve problems that way, but often you're really trying to keep other people happy as well. Now's the time to do it differently, Gemini. This is the year where you've got to deal with some stuff that you swept under the carpet and things you've been avoiding, and take a much more creative approach. It will seem much better than it seemed when you swept it out under the carpet. And in general, the creative approach is going to work everywhere. Take an unusual, otherwise come from behind approach to your problem solving and to all that amazing stuff in your mind. You'll turn everything around this year, Gemini. Cancerians are unfortunately accustomed to being let down by their friends because you expect them to be willing to go as far as you're willing to go for your personal relationships, and you know that doesn't usually happen. So 2020 is your clean up your friendship cupboard year. You need to actually get rid of some dead wood that's been lingering there, and you need to pay more attention to the relationships which have been ongoing, long-lasting in your whole life long. Those are the ones you love the best anyway, but stop carrying all the old dead wood. Cancerians, it's also a great time for your ideals, the things that actually have been important to you for the longest possible time but that have never been done. You've succumbed to pressures that have stopped you doing it. Now is the time to break through those barriers, never mind what anyone else or anything else does to try and stop you. This is the year to go ahead with some of your bigger and more personal ideals to get to a place of deep satisfaction by the end of 2020. Leos, it's a favorite type of year for you to put yourself in the spotlight. You've got to get right out there. You do well in those kind of years, but only problem is a lot of some baggage that is not really what you'd want in the spotlight is going to come out with you. So 2020, Leos, is your year of letting it all hang out whether you like it or not. So it's a good time to sort out stuff, to own up to stuff, to acknowledge stuff, and to get rid of things that are no longer important and valuable to you. You're going to have to put your shoulder to the wheel this year. There's a lot of heavy lifting that needs to be done in order to clear your space and get back to that powerful creative energy that you do so well with. So it's also getting back to basics, the people you know, the places you know. Cut all the fluff, concentrate on what's important so that you can ditch old baggage and ditch stuff that you haven't dealt with for ages. Face your facts, put yourself out there, you'll have a great year. Virgo, your theme for the year is relationships. It's time to sort out what's been bugging you there, or more importantly, what you haven't really been addressing there. You've been silent about stuff, you're not really expressing yourself correctly, you're finding yourself feeling a bit misunderstood or just not getting the chance to kind of state your case and say your piece. So this is the year where you need to focus on that. But when it comes to relationships, Virgo, a different approach is going to be needed this year to fix things that are broken, or to make sure that new relationships get under the way successfully. You're going to have to let go of some of your perfectionist idealist. You tend to have very high expectations of other people and of yourself, especially in relationship situations, and that's going to work against you this year. Let it all hang out. Be messy. Relationships are messy, then you're going to enjoy it. Libra, for you, this year is all about resourcefulness. You're a social sign and you're great at making everyone else feel cool and comfortable and fine and meeting their needs. Well, this year it's all about you. It's time to be a little bit more selfish. In fact, you may even find that you've been spending a lot of your own money or resources or whatever it may be on others. Time to be much more selfish, because your own finances and resources look really, really strong this year. It's a great year for what you need, but that's only going to be true if you use it for yourself. Doesn't exclude great things you might be doing for other people anyway. I'm not saying be selfish with everything, but I am saying it's not always that we've got everything that we need in order to get our own goals met and to really get over a few humps and make it an amazing year. You can do that this year, Libra, if you concentrate on what's in it for me, not only your own resources, but what other people can bring to you. Just ask. Scorpio, your theme for this year is break out, get out there and make yourself visible. Are you listening, Cyril? But actually, that behind the scenes strategy of Scorpio just does not fly in 2020 for most, if not all, Scorpios. So spread your wings, explore new territories, take a different route to work, take a different approach to things, and put your own stuff out in the open. Not a good year to be secretive or behind the scenes, even if those things usually do work for you. Like many other people in 2020, your best way to survive is to change the way that you're doing things, thinking out of the box. I've called it frequently. And for you, that really means exploring. It looks like there are goals that can really be met. Some of your biggest ambitions are on the table this year. If you're willing to explore different avenues, explore different places and ways to get there, you're going to get there. Big ones, Scorpio. Sagittarius, you might not be ambitious in the traditional sense of the word, but this is the time to be ambitious in the traditional sense of the word. You don't have to be traditional, but it means you've got to focus on a goal and put yourself into it single-mindedly. If you have existing goals, and of course you do have an existing profession, a lot about this year will help advance your cause. Your existing work-related things are going to do really well this year. But there is a danger that things can fizzle out too soon. So you need to actually set yourself goals and make sure you create a step-by-step process to get them. You've been playing it, winging it, doing it as you go too much in the last couple of years. Now's the time to be more focused and more direct, because it looks like things really want to manifest for you this year. Sagittarius can really make a difference getting to the end of the year feeling like finally you're getting somewhere with your life. Be focused. Capricorn, your theme for the year is finding a way. Looks like you know what you want. You might even know the steps you want to take to get there, and if only the world would cooperate with you. You heard me talking at the top of the show about all these reactionary forces that are pressing on the world, and unfortunately they're pressing on Capricorns too. Not necessarily in any kind of personal fashion, although don't be surprised if you're in that kind of a world that you might find there are forces working directly against you, and you need to be careful about what you make known about your goals. But also in general, Capricorn, it might seem a little bit of you against the world. Not that anything's hurting you so much, but it just seems the circumstances don't seem quite right for you to get what you want. So Capricorn, your theme for the year is re-strategize, plan it over a longer period, aim for 2 years to get to where these goals are all about, and then you're going to be much more successful. Aquarius, this is a year of new beginnings for you, and some of those new beginnings are all about necessity rather than just a whole new vibe to get going on with. You're going to have to make some changes, let go of some stuff, and create new paths, because some of those old paths have ended, whether you like it or not. So a bit of re-strategizing according to your ideals and according to who is helping you. Does look like your emotional connections are strong. There's great support available to you this year. So that means it's necessary to restructure some of your greater plans, and you're going to get a lot of help and support where that's necessary. Things aren't working easily for you, and it might look like much of the greater universe seems to be against you and your goals this year, but it's all about what do I need emotionally to satisfy myself. Make sure your own emotional needs are satisfied first. That's going to make it much more easy to start the new stuff that you have to do this year. Pisces, this is also a year to become more visible and put yourself out there. Unfortunately, some of that classic Piscean confusion and vagueness is all over you this year, and the world is not helping because it's doing that kind of thing to you too. It does look as if you're not being heard, or that things that you try aren't really working. But what do Pisceans care about the most? People, the ones that you love, the people that you're close to, and that's where you need to put a lot more of your energies. Make yourself visible in their world. Reconnect with people. You spend too much time escaping and ducking and diving, or just generally drifting off in the last couple of years. whether that's in your personal relationships or friendships or family. And 2020 is your year to get that back together. Wind yourself back in and focus on the ones who love you and the ones that you love. Reconnect with your most important connections. Make a solid foundation for 2020. Well, as they say in the classics, it looks to be a doozy of a year. We need to kind of hang on to our seats and our hats, and we're going to get to the end of it in one piece. Not quite over. It's the cycles of 2020. Carry on into 2021. We'll be talking more about that as the year goes on and late in the year. Remember, you can get more details about your year ahead on the Cape Talk podcast website. Look out for the link on Facebook and here next week. And we'll be back next week with the month ahead for February. See you